You know that age-old saying, be the change you wish to see in the world? Well, I have never heard a more accurate statement. I feel like it goes into creating your own reality, but it also goes into the fact that we need to lead by example as people to others around us. If we want to live our best lives and we want other people to be on board with that, we gotta go within and start there. Because at the end of the day, you can't change other people, but you can change yourself. And by changing yourself to be the person that you want to be, you will then influence and positively affect everyone and everything around you. So, by being the change you wish to see, you will then see that change in your world. But it always starts by changing your inner world first. Hey guys, it's Julia. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Throughout the past year or so, I've made a lot of changes, but they weren't on the external, they were on the internal. So I would tell people, I feel like a different person. I'm not the same girl I was last year. I'm not the same girl I was a few months ago, whatever. And it's not something you can really see or pinpoint on the outside. It's an energy around me. It's my vibe. It's the way I am energetically presenting myself. You can see the changes, but they're not super visible externally because they were internal changes. Now I'm starting to actually see a lot of external changes in my life, but they are compounded products of my internal changes. And true lasting change, like I said, starts from within. So when you do the inner work and you make the internal changes, then whatever changes on the external is most likely going to be a positive change in your life. It's actually the true change because it came from inside of you, versus you going and changing and manipulating and rearranging something externally without doing the inner work first. That's not gonna last. You might have that manifestation or that thing for a little while, but then you go back to where you were before because you didn't do the inner work to get there, to make it concrete and solidify. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to do the inner work, how to make the internal changes, so that when things start to change on the external, it's because of what you did inside, and it's going to last, and you're going to be able to enjoy it, and it's going to be something that you're not living in a fear state of, oh, I might lose this, or what happens if I lose this? I have nothing. It's like, no, I did this within. This is a product of my inner state, my inner being. Anything that changes negative or positive on the external, I can always make to be what I desire because I know how to create my own reality from within. And when you're in that state, you feel so much more free. You feel like you can trust the universe, trust source, trust God, whatever you believe in, to bring you what it is you need in that moment, wherever you are, whatever it is, because you know how to access that internal state, and you know how to keep a pure, clear mind, aura, vibe. And when it isn't so clear and it isn't so pure, you know how to get back to that place. I need some water. Side note, this is totally off topic to the video, but I heard somewhere, this was on TikTok, that money is the same energy as water. Currency, current. Sea. Money is currency. There are currents in the sea. Money flows in, money flows out. The waves flow in, the waves flow out. So that's a little food for thought. Think of money like water and you might just manifest more money. Anyway, back to our scheduled programming. So let me give you an example of what happens when you manipulate your external reality without changing your internal reality to reflect what you want externally first. So let's say you want to lose weight and you start a diet, but you're not doing the internal work to heal your inner wounds, your inner traumas that caused you to gain the weight in the first place. Well, you know what? The diet might work and you might lose the weight for a little while until you're triggered again and you're in that negative mind state where you feel like you need to overeat unhealthy processed foods, or you fall off your workout routine, or you just fall off your diet in the first place and you can't keep the same weight loss that you had originally. Why is that? It's because you didn't do the inner work to heal the trauma, the wounds around the weight gain that caused you to eat unhealthily for whatever reason. Maybe it was because you felt a lack of love in your life and the food made you feel the dopamine and the pleasant feelings that took you out of that negative mind state for a little bit. But then when you came back to reality, you felt worse. Most of the time when we try to manipulate the external to feel better, it can cause things like addictions, it can cause things like toxic relationships. It can cause things like working jobs we don't enjoy. A lot of stuff that we could avoid by just going within first, figuring out what's internal in here, what we need, what we want, what we desire, what we need to heal. If we went inside first, we could avoid a lot of suffering. But it can be really hard in this world that we live in with all of the stimulation around us from other people, social media, TV, news, whatever environment we're in. There's so much around us that we are being influenced by. And it can be very hard to go within yourself when you have so many distractions and so much outer influence. Even before we were literally born and we were still in our mom's tummies, we were still being influenced. We were still learning things. We were still accumulating stories, thoughts, emotional triggers, and we've been accumulating them our whole life. It's hard to break free of all that conditioning after so many years of experiencing it. But what you have to realize is all that conditioning isn't you. It's just stuff you learned, and you can recondition yourself to think and believe different things, different stories, more positive thoughts. It just takes reconditioning yourself, and you can do that through meditation, through surrounding yourself with different people that are more positive influences on you and your life. You can be intentional with the social media that you consume. You can be intentional with the books you read, with the media you allow yourself to watch. All those things can compound and add up and recondition you into more free feeling thoughts and emotions. But because we live in a society, you can do all those things and really try to separate yourself from all of the negative influences in your life. But there still will be a lot of influences that you can't just control physically. And maybe those are certain family members, certain public places you go, however you live your life. There will be things that you can't externally control. We don't live in bubbles. So what you have to realize is how others and the world influence you are just stories. They're just thoughts, and they're just emotional triggers within you. If you're feeling emotionally triggered, it's because there is something within you or your energetic field that you maybe experienced when you were younger, maybe a trauma or a pain that is coming up to heal. So if somebody in your world triggers that, it's showing it to you. Oh, hey, there's something I need to heal here. And a lot of those we accumulate when we're young, when we're under the age of 8. But sometimes in our life, we do get influenced by people, by their stories, by their thoughts, and we take on a new emotional trigger. So if you feel yourself taking on a negative story or a thought spiral that somebody else influenced on you, you just have to remind yourself that this is a story. Regardless of the objective truth, whether this happened or that happened, what you're perceiving is a story around the prompting event of objective truth. You're going to perceive it however you perceive it, and that is the subjective story that you're telling yourself. Okay, so for example, let's say a prompting event happens to you, and it was neutral, but you could perceive it as negative, you could perceive it as neutral, or you could perceive it as positive. Let's say you don't know how to perceive it yet, and then there's somebody who comes into your life, and they influence you, and they tell you about a time when something similar happened to them in a negative story format. So you take on their story and relate it to your prompting event and make it your story and put a negative tint on a neutral event that happened to you. That is where you just took somebody else's influence. Somebody influenced you, you took it in, you allowed it to influence you, and then you had negative thought spirals because of it, and then it triggered negative emotions within you. That is one way you can allow somebody to control you. But the truth is, nobody can actually control your mind or what you think. They can only influence it. So that's really just an example of somebody influencing you to think a certain way based off of whether they mean to or not, because we influence everyone around us on a regular basis in every moment, regardless of if we mean to. So that's why people say lead by example, because if you're trying your best to heal within you and see things positively, then that energy rubs off on other people, just as my example of somebody relating back to a negative story. And we do this whether we mean to or not. Sometimes it's just we want to connect with other people and that's how we relate. It could be through a negative story. But sometimes there are people who don't want the best for you because they're in a miserable state state, you know, misery loves company. So maybe they will influence you in a negative way. And maybe they wanted to because they saw you being really happy and they couldn't deal with that. There are people like that, and there are also people that don't mean to. The truth always comes out and you'll eventually see the difference. And either way, it can be tough, but what you have to realize is that no one can control you if you have a strong foundation within yourself. If you can look at a story that someone tells you, whether they mean to negatively or positively influence you, or whether they're just living their life saying things not even realizing, you're gonna realize you can choose to believe it or not. You can choose to make that story true to you, or you can choose to rewrite your own story. Because no matter what, whether we have free will physically or we don't, whether somebody took away our free will in a physical manner, or we're just children and we live with parents who control our lives, because that's what parents do. They sort of have to control your life in certain ways as a child for your own good and safety. Although there are parents that abuse that power and there are parents that don't. So, you know, there's both. But no matter what, you have free will of thought. So you could be completely brainwashed, have your thoughts completely influenced. You still have free will to decide. No matter how much brainwashing or influence somebody puts on you, you still get to choose your thoughts. No one is in your head being like, think this. Although it can be very, very hard after years of conditioning, years of influence, even brainwashing, to realize that you have the free will of thought, to choose your next thought, but you always do get the choice. You just have to realize it, because if you don't realize it, it's very hard to break free of the influences of the world around us. All that being said, we are going to be influenced positively, negatively, neutrally by the world, by other people, by ourselves. And like I said, once we have the awareness that everywhere you go, everything you see, everyone you meet is influencing you in some type of way, positively or negatively or neutrally, whatever it may be, then you can take that into account when it comes to going within yourself to change your own reality with your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions/actions. So having that awareness is the first place that we can start, because we know that we control our stories, our beliefs, our thoughts, our minds. And yes, we're going to be influenced. We can use that to our advantage. That means paying attention to the influences that help us versus hinder us. Surrounding ourselves with more of those influences. Then when we are around the influences that do hinder us or bring us down, choosing to go within and change our story, change our thoughts, change our beliefs around that, and then not reacting when those things come into our life. So a good example of this would be, let's say you're driving through traffic, and traffic can be a very frustrating process to be in, and then somebody cuts you off. But if you are aware of the fact that getting upset and bothered and honking, going back and forth with somebody on the road, having road rage, is only going to negatively affect you and your day and those around you, you can choose to be above that. You can choose to think, oh man, you know, that person's probably in just as much of a hurry as I am, and they're choosing to do that right now, and that is what it is. That could be the story you choose. That's not a negative story or a positive story, it's a neutral story. And it is probably a lot more based in reality than saying, wow, this jerk just cut me off in traffic, my day is ruined, I'm gonna be late for this event that I need to go to, blah 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 blah, and then go down the negative thought spiral and react, and then start honking your horn and doing this and that, and then getting there late and then being in a mood and maybe missing what you needed to do, versus if you're just neutral about it. If you can't be positive about it, at least be neutral. Tell yourself that neutral story, and then if you're at a neutral place, you can be like, you know what, maybe this is protection. Maybe the universe is actually going to make me there at the perfect time to get the perfect opportunity to do exactly what I need to do and want to do for my next step in life. Maybe I needed to be in this traffic to get to where I need to be in life. You could literally rewrite that whole story, reframe it into something positive, and change your whole experience. And then your reaction will be a lot more positive than the reaction of this jerk just cut me off in traffic. My camera died and I had to switch the battery out, so if it looks a little different, that is why. But as I was saying, you choosing to see the events in your life in a way that is beneficial to you and the people around you and the world at large is what is going to take you from being in a place of suffering to being in a place of thriving. If you constantly see everything as the universe is against me, everyone is against me, that is what you're going to create more of, even if that isn't necessarily true, even if things aren't necessarily happening to your detriment. If you see them that way, it will appear that way and it will continue to be that way. But if you see things, even if they aren't necessarily to your benefit, as something to your benefit, you are going to accumulate more things that feel like they are to your benefit until they are to your benefit. That's just the way it works. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are. So if you see yourself as this person of abundance and light and love and joy and thriving, what do you think you're going to receive? You get what you put out. So if you are this person of insecurity, anxiety, stress, depression, what do you think you're going to receive? More stress, more anxiety, more depression, more things not working out. And I know it's a lot easier said than done to just switch a thought, switch a feeling, this and that, whatever. But it is a lot easier than we make it to be. I want you to sit with that. We make it a lot harder than it needs to be. We really do. And the best thing I can say is really just sitting with yourself and your negative belief and being like, what benefit do I have continuing to feed this energy? Like, what's the point? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't make my life any better. I should just let it go. You'll get there eventually. Sometimes it takes getting to rock bottom to get there. And I know for myself, it's taken a lot of hitting the bottom to be like, what's the point? Why am I doing this? I need more water. Here's another really good example of taking something that honestly can feel very crappy and making it be a blessing. I love this one. Let's say you're going through a really tough breakup or divorce or a friendship breakup, whatever it is. Somebody is leaving your life and you think and feel like you don't want them to leave your life. Maybe they were a positive person in your life, but maybe you guys outgrew each other. In that moment, it can be really hard because there's so many physical, emotional, mental attachments to that person that is leaving your life. But what we don't realize is sometimes we have to let something go to receive what we truly need, what will be a much greater influence in our life, a much greater benefit in our life, a much greater joy in our life. And sometimes you can't have both, so you have to let the lower thing go to receive the greater thing. And that happens a lot in breakups and friendship breakups and whatever. So this can even work with a job, like letting go of a job that is okay for your dream job. In that moment of letting go of the thing that is lesser, it can be scary because we don't know what is next. But it's also beautiful because it allows us that freedom to let go of what is tying us to a lower place so that we now are untethered to that lower place and we can expand out further and receive the higher, greater thing that we want and that we need as our next step in our journey. So yeah, something that could seem really negative, like getting dumped or getting fired, can actually be a blessing in disguise. And that really goes back to trusting in the universe, trusting in ourselves to accumulate and create that for ourselves. The most important thing you can do is to be very intentional with the stories you tell yourself and the beliefs that you have and the thoughts that you think. It can be difficult. That's why we have to practice mindfulness every day. I think it's very important to sit with yourself and meditate daily, but when you're out in the world, you can't always just sit there and meditate. And that's where the skill of mindfulness from DBT therapy, that you guys know I talk about all the time, comes into play. Being mindful of your thoughts, being mindful of other people around you, being observant of your surroundings. That is what's going to help you the most. Because if you can be present in the moment and mindful, you can catch negative stories from other people or yourself. You can catch negative thoughts from yourself or negative words from other people. And then you get the choice to choose how you feel. You get the choice to choose how you react. And if we continue to be mindful throughout the day, we can continue to propel ourselves in those positive directions by choosing better stories, choosing better beliefs, choosing better thoughts, and choosing better emotions. And that is how we control our lives, by being mindful and intentional in making those choices. And the same way that we can be influenced by others is the same way that we can influence others. We can't control other people. We can't control their mind, their thoughts, their stories, their emotions. But we can trigger them negatively. Of course we can. We can also influence them negatively, yes. But we can be in our integrity as well and choose to influence them positively. Choose to speak life and words of affirmation into them and watch how they grow and change based off of how we grow and change. Some people will see you becoming your healthiest, best version and they will be inspired by it. They will watch you leading by example and then want to become their version of that as well. And others may not resonate with it and they will peacefully vibrate out of your life. But that's the only way you can, with integrity and long-lastingly, change others, is by positively influencing them and leading by example. And that's actually something that I like to do with my Snapchat. First, let me say I'm not a perfect person, and of course I've gone on Snapchat and probably complained about something silly every once in a while. But what I try to do on a daily basis is share my journey and share the positive changes that I make along the way, the positive thoughts I think, the things that I'm contemplating, the healthy food that I'm eating, the quick healthy meals that I make, the intentions that I set at night for all of us collectively, the positive affirmations that I say to myself that I want to say to them as well. And I get to watch through the comments how people change over time, how they are influenced by my daily life and the positive changes that I'm making. And you can do this with friends, you can do this with family, you can do this on social media, you can do this with partners, you can do this with anyone and everything. And the more you positively change yourself and positively influence others, the more you'll feel like you're serving a greater purpose in the world, and the more you will be led down the path that is meant for you to be led down. So that is it for this week's video. I love you guys so much. Bye!